The music had barely begun when the CEO crossed the ballroom, stopped in front of the exhausted single father, and held out her hand. She smiled as if she had known him for years and quietly said that she wanted just one dance. He almost refused. His shirt was borrowed, his hands still carried the faint marks of a mechanic's work, and his 6-year-old son was asleep in a chair near the wall. But he took her hand anyway. Neither of them knew that those few minutes on the dance floor would change both of their lives forever. Before we continue, if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Bright Acts for more emotional stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. Daniel Carter had spent the last 4 years learning how to survive without expecting life to be fair. At 35, he was raising his 6-year-old son, Noah, alone after losing his wife to an illness that had left their family buried under hospital bills and grief. Daniel worked long hours as a mechanic at a small neighborhood garage. He repaired engines during the day, delivered food at night when money was tight, and came home to prepare school lunches before sleeping for a few precious hours. He never complained in front of Noah. Whenever his son asked why they could not afford the things other children had, Daniel simply smiled and told him that happiness was not something you bought. The wedding that evening belonged to Daniel's old friend Marcus, who had insisted that Daniel attend. Daniel had nearly canceled because he could not afford to lose an evening of work, but Marcus had reminded him that friendship mattered too. So Daniel borrowed a dark suit from a coworker, carefully ironed the shirt, and brought Noah along because he had no one to watch him. He planned to stay only long enough to congratulate the couple, eat something small, and leave before anyone noticed how uncomfortable he felt among wealthy guests. The ballroom looked like another world. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, golden lights reflected across polished floors, and waiters moved between tables carrying glasses that probably cost more than Daniel's weekly grocery budget. Everywhere he looked, people wore expensive clothes and spoke about vacations, investments, and businesses. Daniel felt like an outsider. He kept his hands in his pockets and stayed near Noah, who had fallen asleep after a long day. Then Daniel noticed the woman everyone seemed to be watching. Victoria Hayes was the CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the city. She was 38, elegant, successful, and known for being almost impossible to impress. Yet beneath her polished appearance was a woman carrying a loneliness nobody at the wedding could see. Her father had built the company from nothing, and after his death, Victoria had spent years proving she deserved the position he had left behind. She had money, influence, and everything society considered success, but she had slowly forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about her without wanting something in return. Victoria had been standing near the dance floor when she noticed Daniel helping an elderly waiter pick up a tray that had accidentally fallen. Daniel did not look around to see whether anyone was watching. He simply helped gather the glasses, apologized for blocking the guests, and then returned to his sleeping son. Something about that small act caught Victoria's attention. Later, when the wedding band began playing a slow song, Victoria walked directly toward Daniel. People turned to watch. Daniel looked behind him, wondering if she was approaching someone else. She stopped in front of him and extended her hand. "Just one dance," she said. Daniel stared at her, embarrassed. He explained that he was not exactly dressed for dancing and that his son was asleep nearby. Victoria looked at Noah, then back at Daniel, and told him that one dance would not hurt anyone. So Daniel took her hand. At first, he moved awkwardly. Victoria laughed softly, not at him but with him, and within moments the tension disappeared. Daniel began to relax. Under the warm chandelier lights, the two of them moved slowly across the floor while the rest of the ballroom seemed to fade away. Victoria noticed that Daniel kept glancing toward his son. Daniel noticed that Victoria looked genuinely happy for the first time that evening. Then Noah woke up. He rubbed his eyes and saw his father dancing with the beautiful woman. Instead of being confused, he smiled and began clapping from his chair. Several guests laughed warmly. Victoria smiled at him, and Daniel felt something inside his chest loosen. When the song ended, Daniel thanked her and started to step away. But Victoria did not let go immediately. She asked him why he had looked so sad when he entered the ballroom. Daniel hesitated, then admitted that sometimes he felt invisible. He worked hard, raised his son, paid his bills, and tried to be strong, but people often looked through him because he was not rich or important. Victoria's expression changed. She told him that being unseen by people did not mean being unimportant. Daniel thanked her again and prepared to leave. That should have been the end. But later that night, Victoria discovered that Daniel had left something behind. It was a small paper drawing Noah had made earlier. It showed 3 people holding hands beneath a crooked yellow sun. Daniel had written the words, "Dad," "Me," and "the nice lady" beneath it. Victoria stared at the picture for a long time. The next morning, she asked her assistant to find Daniel. When Daniel arrived at Victoria's office, he expected trouble. He assumed perhaps there had been some misunderstanding at the wedding. Instead, Victoria told him she had learned about his work and his financial struggles. She had also discovered that the small garage where he worked was about to close because the owner could no longer afford the rent. Daniel immediately became uncomfortable. He did not want charity. Victoria understood. She did not offer him money. Instead, she offered him a position managing the company's vehicle maintenance division, a job that paid enough for Daniel to finally stop working 3 jobs. She explained that she was not hiring him because she felt sorry for him. She was hiring him because she had watched him help someone when nobody was watching, and because character mattered more to her than a perfect resume. Daniel accepted only after making sure he had earned the opportunity. Months passed. Daniel's life slowly changed. He had evenings with Noah again. He could attend school events instead of missing them. He repaired cars during working hours and came home before his son fell asleep. Noah began smiling more. The boy who had once asked why his father never rested now proudly told his classmates that his dad was the best mechanic in the city. Victoria's life changed too. She began eating dinner without checking her phone. She started visiting Daniel and Noah on weekends. What began as friendship became something neither of them had expected. Daniel taught Victoria that success meant little if you had nobody to share it with. Victoria taught Daniel that accepting help did not make him weak. Still, Daniel was afraid. He worried that their worlds were too different. He worried people would say he had used Victoria. He worried Noah would become attached and then lose another person he loved. Victoria understood every fear because she carried her own. One evening, she took Daniel and Noah back to the same ballroom where they had first danced. The place was empty except for a few staff members preparing for another event. Victoria walked onto the dance floor and held out her hand. Daniel smiled. He asked if she was still asking for just one dance. Victoria shook her head and told him that she had changed her mind. She did not want just one dance anymore. She wanted the kind of life where they never had to count how many dances they were allowed to have. Daniel looked at Noah, who was grinning from across the room. Then he took Victoria's hand. They danced slowly beneath the same golden lights. But this time Daniel did not feel like an outsider. He felt like he had finally come home. Years later, Noah would still tell people about that wedding. He would say his father went there as a lonely man with borrowed clothes and came home with hope. He would say a single dance had somehow become the beginning of everything. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes life does not change because someone gives you millions of dollars or opens a magical door. Sometimes it changes because one person sees your worth when everyone else looks away. Sometimes kindness arrives disguised as a simple invitation. Sometimes a tired father only needs one person to remind him that his story is not over. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a little hope today. And before the story ends, leave a comment saying, "Everyone deserves a second chance." Let that simple sentence be a reminder that no matter how difficult life becomes, there can always be another chapter waiting to begin. Daniel once thought he was walking into a wedding for one evening of friendship. Instead, he walked into a moment that changed his future. Victoria thought she was asking a lonely stranger for just one dance. Instead, she found someone who taught her what real love, family, and kindness looked like. And from that night forward, neither of them ever sat down again. Not because the music never stopped, but because they had finally found a reason to keep moving forward together.